When I was 16, my parents joked in front of their friends that I was the family mistake. My mom laughed, pointed at me and said, "Birth control is 99% effective. He's the 1%. That night, I walked out with just a backpack and $40 to my name. I didn't look back. It's been 6 years since then, and today they showed up at my door, in tears, begging me to talk. Hey Reddit. Before we dive in, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and be a part of this growing community. Let's start the story. I'll never forget the way their laughter echoed through the house that night. It was a Friday evening, and my parents had some friends over. They were drinking wine in the living room, reminiscing about their younger days, while I quietly made my way to the kitchen to grab something to eat. By then, I had learned to move silently when they had guests over. I was the background noise, the forgotten presence. But this time, I wasn't quiet enough. I dropped a spoon, a stupid metal spoon that clanged loudly against the tile floor, and the room went silent for just a bit too long. Then the laughter started again, but now it had a different tone. I heard my dad say, loud enough for everyone to hear. My mom followed it up, pointing at me from across the room with that smug little smirk on her face. Birth control is 99% effective, and he's the 1% we wish never happened. Everyone laughed, everyone but me. I stood there frozen, half in the kitchen, half in the hallway, holding back a flood of emotions I had shoved deep down for years. That moment wasn't even the worst thing they'd ever said to me, but something about the way they said it, so publicly, so shamelessly, broke something inside me. That night, I don't even remember what happened right after. I just remember going back to my room, locking the door, and sitting on the edge of my bed in complete silence. It wasn't like a dramatic movie scene. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just packed slowly, methodically. I grabbed my old backpack, shoved in a few clothes, my toothbrush, a notebook, and the $40 I had managed to save from doing yard work for the neighbors. No grand escape, no farewell letter. I opened the window and climbed out into the cold night with nothing but a numb sense of purpose and the faint sound of their laughter still echoing in my ears. I had no plan, I just walked. I made it to the bus station, and bought a one-way ticket as far as $40 could take me. I slept in bus stations, on park benches, and occasionally at shelters for the first few months. Life was hell. I starved some days, stole food on others, and relied on the kindness of complete strangers who showed more compassion than my own family ever had. But I was free, and that freedom, even in its darkest form, was better than staying one more day in a house where I was nothing more than a punchline. Eventually, I caught a break. I got a job at a small diner after the owner saw me sleeping behind the building. He gave me food, work, and a chance. That job turned into stability. Stability turned into a roof over my head, and then came community college night classes, and later trade school. I found my path slowly, brick by brick, mistake by mistake. I built a life with my own hands from the ashes of rejection and the rubble of abandonment. I kept my past locked away in a part of my mind I rarely visited. I didn't talk about it, didn't share it. The few people who knew me well enough to ask about my family got vague answers. I always told them I was estranged. That was the word I used. It was easier than saying my parents told their friends I was an accident and laughed in my face while doing it. Some nights, I could still hear their voices when I tried to fall asleep. Their laughter became a ghost I couldn't quite shake. I thought about sending them a letter once, maybe not to reconnect, but just to let them know I was alive. But then, I remembered my mom's smirk, the way she said it, like I was some inconvenient joke, and I tossed the thought of them away like trash. They didn't deserve to know that I survived. They didn't deserve to know that I made it. There were birthdays that passed without a single message. Holidays came and went with no contact. Every year I expected them to maybe make an attempt, even a fake one, but nothing ever came. The more time passed, the more convinced I was that they had simply erased me, just as I had erased them. Then this morning, 6 years to the day after I left, I opened my front door and found my mother and father standing on my porch. My mother's face was streaked with tears, and my dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. It was like seeing people from a past life, strangers wearing familiar faces. My first instinct was to close the door, but my legs froze. My mom tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Dad, always the tough one, was visibly shaking. "We've been looking for you," my mom finally said. I wanted to scream, Now you care, but the words never came out. Instead, I just stood there as they begged me to talk, to let them explain, to come inside. My chest felt like it was about to collapse from the weight of all the memories, the scars, the years of silence. They were crying, genuinely crying, and I didn't know whether to laugh in their faces, or fall apart right there on the porch. I asked them how they found me, and my dad told me they had hired someone a year ago to track me down after a family emergency. His brother had passed away, and I guess seeing someone die unexpectedly had jolted something inside him. They said they were ashamed they never realized how much damage they had done, that they missed me every single day. My mom said not a day went by that she didn't regret what she said that night. But I remembered her smirk. I remembered their laughter. I didn't let them in. Instead, I told them they had 5 minutes to explain why the hell they thought they deserved even a second of my time after what they did. And in that moment, I saw it. The fear in their eyes. The realization that the little boy they mocked and drove away was no longer theirs to control. They started telling me their version of the past, spinning tales of regret, therapy, and how they were different now. Better. They even tried to hand me an old photo album they'd brought, like that would erase the years of pain. But it didn't. It only reminded me of what I'd lost. Or rather, I had to lose everything in order to find myself. My mom talked about her childhood, her trauma, how she never knew how to parent properly. My dad admitted that he thought being cold was the only way to prepare me for the real world. It was almost surreal watching these people who had once mocked me break down in front of me, scrambling for some kind of redemption. But even as they spoke, I could feel the weight of their words pressing against old wounds. Apologies don't erase abandonment. Tears don't undo 6 years of silence. Their pain didn't outweigh mine, and their explanations didn't sound like apologies. They sounded like people desperate not to be hated anymore. And while part of me wanted to slam the door and vanish all over again, another part, the one I buried for so long, wanted answers. After 5 minutes I told them to leave, but my mom refused. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, begging me not to shut them out. My dad stood behind her, eyes bloodshot, his voice shaking as he asked me to give them just one more chance. And that's when I realized, this wasn't going to end with a door slam, or a simple goodbye. They weren't leaving until I made a decision, and deep down, part of me, just a small part, was torn, not because I forgave them, but because I didn't know if I needed closure or revenge. So I told them something I hadn't planned to say. I said, come back tomorrow, same time, but if you want me to listen, you better be ready to tell me everything. No lies, no half-truths, just the raw, ugly truth. They nodded, then they left. And now I'm sitting here on my couch, staring at the photo album they left behind, wondering if I made the right choice. Part of me wants to burn it. Part of me wants to open it. But the one thing I know for sure is that tomorrow, the truth comes out, and I'm finally ready to hear it. The next morning came faster than I expected it. I barely slept. My mind kept racing in circles, haunted by the image of my mother on her knees, sobbing on my doorstep. I sat up most of the night, staring at the photo album they left behind. I didn't open it. I just looked at the cover, dusty blue leather with gold embossed corners. It felt like a relic from a time I had tried so hard to forget. I wasn't sure why I had told them to come back. Maybe part of me needed to hear it. The real story. Not the sugar-coated version. Not more apologies soaked in guilt and desperation. I needed them to tell me who they were. Why they became the people who could look their child in the eye and call him a mistake. They showed up right on time. I heard the knock just as the clock hit 10 a.m. Same door, same posture. My mom looked like she hadn't slept either. My dad carried a small box. This time, they didn't say anything until I opened the door and stepped aside to let them in. I don't know why I did. I guess I needed this as much as they did, even if every instinct in me screamed to shut them out. We sat in silence for a minute or two, just breathing the same air. It felt strange, like two separate timelines crashing into each other. Finally I said, start talking, and my dad, he opened the box and pulled out an old letter, yellowed with age, folded neatly. He told me it was written by my grandmother, his mother, the night before she died. Inside it was a confession. She never wanted kids. She had forced herself to raise them, but emotionally, she had nothing to give, and she had passed that emptiness on to him. He said he had grown up in a house where silence was the only language, and sarcasm was the only form of affection. That night, they mocked me in front of their friends. He admitted it was him trying to cope, the only way he knew how, by turning pain into performance. My mother spoke next. Her story was darker. She had me when she was barely 20, a child raising a child. She never wanted to be a mother. Not then, not with him. She had been forced into the marriage after getting pregnant. Her dreams of art school vanished the moment the test turned positive, and every time she looked at me, she didn't see a son, she saw the life she lost. That night, when she laughed and called me the 1% mistake, she wasn't joking. She genuinely felt like her life had been derailed by my existence. She said she spent years resenting me for something I had no control over, and when they laughed that night, it wasn't because they didn't care. It was because caring would have meant facing everything they had buried. I listened, numb. My heart wanted to feel something: anger, sadness, closure, but I felt a cold, dull ache where love should have been. Then my mom did something unexpected. She took out a small, worn journal from her bag. The pages were curled, and the binding was fragile. She told me it was hers, and that she had started writing in it 6 months after I left. The journal was full of letters she had written to me year after year on my birthdays, on Christmases, and on days when she saw a boy who resembled me and felt the weight of guilt press against her chest. She didn't ask me to read them. She just handed it to me and said, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but this is all I have left to give." I took it not because I had forgiven her, but because a part of me needed to know if any of it had been real. I wanted to see if there was ever a version of her that felt something close to love for me, even if it came too late. After a long silence, my dad asked if I hated them. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I did for a long time, and sometimes I still do. But hating you hasn't made the pain go away. It hasn't made me feel better. It hasn't given me peace. Maybe that's why I let you in today, because I don't want to hate you for the rest of my life. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to let you in either." I told them I had spent the last 6 years building myself from nothing. Every ounce of strength I had came from the fact that they left me no other choice. While they had the luxury of regret, I had to survive. I had to learn to be my own parent. I had to hold myself when I cried alone in alleyways, feed myself when no one else would, and love myself when no one ever had. My mom cried harder at that. My dad just sat there, his shoulders slumped, eyes locked on the floor like a man being sent. I don't think they came expecting forgiveness, but I think they hoped for a crack in the wall. And maybe I gave them that, just a small crack, enough to let the light in, enough to let the past breathe a little. I didn't hug them. I didn't tell them I loved them. I just walked them to the door and said, "I'll let you know if I want to talk again." That was it. No promises, no guarantees. They left quietly, no more begging, no more tears, just two broken people carrying the weight of their choices. After they left, I finally opened the photo album. I flipped through the pages, slowly. Most of the pictures were unfamiliar, birthdays I barely remembered, trips I had forgotten, smiles that looked staged. But then I saw one picture, me around 5 or 6, asleep on the couch with my mom curled up next to me, her arms around me. She wasn't smiling, she looked tired, worn, but there was something in her face, something close to real. I closed the album, my hands were shaking. I picked up the journal next. I didn't read all of it, just the first entry. It said, "I don't know if you'll ever see this, but if you do, I hope you know I think about you every day. I hope you're safe. I hope you're not cold. I hope you're happy. I'm sorry for all the ways I failed you. I'm sorry for who I was. You didn't deserve any of it." I didn't cry, at least not then. But later that night, alone in my bed, I broke down, not for them, but for me, for the boy I was, for the boy who thought he was unlovable, for the man I had become, scarred, but standing. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I'll ever let them fully back into my life. But I do know this: I'm not their mistake. I never was, and I don't need their love to prove my worth. I proved it every single day. I survived without them. I sat in silence for a long time, holding their forgiveness that I hadn't asked for, and hadn't expected. At some point I realized that they had left, but they hadn't really left me. Their absence had always been with me, like an invisible shadow, and I had learned to live with. But here's what I understood: their departure, their mistakes, their regrets, none of it matters anymore. What matters is what I choose for myself. I have learned to be strong, even when it was hard. When you don't know for too long what it means to be loved, you start to doubt what love really is. You stop believing in it, because it seems like it was never there. But one day, you realize that love doesn't always come in the form you expect. Sometimes it comes in the form of pain, in the form of loneliness, in the form of lessons you must go through to become the person you are. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but I am not afraid anymore. I have learned to forgive, though that doesn't mean everything is forgotten. I've realized that forgiveness is not weakness, but strength. It's the opportunity to leave the past where it belongs and move forward without letting it control your life. I can be happy regardless of what happened before. Not everything I went through was wrong. There were moments when I felt strong, when I overcame my fears and doubts, when I realized that I could be loving and caring, despite everything that happened before. I began to appreciate the moments when, despite the pain, I kept moving forward. That's what love is. Not just feelings, but the actions you take every day. I no longer expect anything from them. They gave me all they could, even if it wasn't what I had hoped for. I have learned to see life different. I know that my worth doesn't depend on what others think of me, and it doesn't depend on what they gave or didn't give me. My worth lies in how I treat myself, how I build my life, and the decisions I make every day. I am no longer alone. I have learned to be with myself, and that is perhaps the most important thing I can do for myself. I have learned to love and accept myself, despite all the difficulties. It wasn't easy, but I did it, and I am proud of myself for that. Now when I look into the future, I am not afraid. I know there will still be many challenges on this path, but I am ready to face them with an open heart and clear intentions. I will keep growing. I will keep learning, and maybe someday I will be able to forgive them fully. But for now, I will live my life, write my own story, and search for my own path to happiness. I've realized that forgiveness isn't something you give to others, it's something you give to yourself. And perhaps that was the most important lesson from everything I've been through.